right, let's talk about a word that's, well, it's everywhere, isn't it? Populism. You hear it on the news, you see it online, you might even hear it at the dinner table. It gets used as a rallying cry, an insult, a badge of honor. But what does it actually mean?
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Is this a genuine voice for people who feel forgotten, a much-needed reset for governments that seem out of touch? Or is it something more dangerous, a real threat to democracy itself? That's the core of the debate, and we're going to break down both sides.
Okay, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let's nail down what we're actually talking about. See, populism, it's not really about being left-wing or right-wing. At its heart, it's a style of politics. It's all built on this really powerful, simple idea. It's the good, hardworking people versus a corrupt, out-of-touch elite.
So, first up, let's look at the case for populism. From this point of view, it's not some kind of threat. Actually, it's a desperately needed course correction.
And this argument, it really starts with a feeling I think a lot of us can relate to. This idea that modern politics has just become so complicated. It's like it's speaking in different language, full of jargon, run by people in offices far away, and it just feels totally disconnected from our actual lives. And that gap, that creates a serious sense of alienation.
And that feeling isn't just a feeling. It has real-world consequences. Just look at Japan's local elections back in 2023. In a lot of places, voter turnout dropped below this number, 40%. For people who support populism, this is like their Exhibit A. They'd say, hey, when most people don't even think it's worth voting, you can't tell me the system isn't broken. So what's populism's answer to this? Well, it's pretty direct. It tries to cut through all that political noise with clear, simple language that everybody can understand. The goal is to energize all those voters who feel like they've been ignored, to pull them back into the political process. And it really insists that policy should be about the concerns of people on the ground, not just some experts in a faraway capital. So if you look at it this way, populism isn't the disease at all, it's the symptom. It really frames the choice in stark terms. Are you going to stick with an elite system that just ignores what people want, or do you embrace a movement that actually tries to listen? Okay, but that's just one side of the coin. There's a whole other argument that says populism isn't a democratic reset at all. In fact, it's a huge, dangerous gamble with democracy itself. And the core warning here is pretty simple. Populism runs on division. It takes these really complex, nuanced issues and just boils them down to a simple fight of good versus evil. Us, the good people, against them, the corrupt elites. And that kind of thinking just eats away at the compromise and debate that a healthy democracy absolutely needs to survive.
And this us versus them idea is absolutely central. The people are always shown as this one single morally pure group, the silent majority. And the enemies? Oh, that list can get pretty long. It can be the establishment, the media, academics, even minority groups, anyone who could be painted as one of the corrupt or disloyal others. So critics would say this whole approach just creates a completely toxic political landscape. Thoughtful debate gets thrown out the window in favor of catchy, simple slogans. Outrage becomes the main currency. And that's when misinformation just spreads like wildfire, especially on social media. And what happens to expert knowledge? It gets dismissed, right? It's all part of some elite conspiracy, which leads to policies based on emotion, not on facts. Yeah, this quote really nails it, doesn't it? That short-term buzz you get from populism, that feeling of finally being heard. Well, the warning is that it comes at a huge long-term cost, the erosion of the very rational foundations that hold society together. All right, so we've heard both arguments. Let's put them side by side now, really zero in on where they fundamentally clash. First up, is populism a mirror or a megaphone? I mean, does it simply reflect what the people already believe, their authentic will? Or is it actually a tool that manipulates them, taking their frustrations and amping them up with fear and anger? And then what about experts? Is populism a healthy, necessary check on the power of so-called technocrats? The unelected few who make all the big decisions? Or is it something much more dangerous, a kind of anti-intellectualism where facts don't matter and expertise is just labeled as fake? And that brings us to the biggest question of all. Is populism a tool for democratic renewal, something that wakes up a sleepy, stale system? Or is it a slippery slope to authoritarianism, where one leader claims to be the only voice of the people and starts taking democracy apart from the inside? So there you have it,
On one hand, a really powerful case that this is a democratic reset, and on the other, a very stark warning that it's a dangerous gamble. So, where do we go from here? When you look at it all, populism really feels like a force of nature. It has this incredible energy that can wake up a democracy, right? It's a signal flare that there's deep dissatisfaction that really needs to be addressed. But it's also the storm that, if it's channeled into pure anger and division, can threaten to tear that very same democracy apart. So maybe the question we should be asking isn't a simple, is populism good or bad? Maybe the real challenge for all of us is this. How do we actually listen to the legitimate problems it highlights, that very real feeling of being left behind, without falling for the division and the anger it so often uses as fuel? How do we harness that incredible energy for positive change without getting burned by the fire? Honestly, that feels like the defining question of our time.